Talk shoes. Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror, movies, and awesomeness. This week we continue what we're calling the Groovy Horror Retrospective, a look at classic horror of the 60s and 70s, and it is in fact our Christmas episode. So this movie is the 1974, it's going to do double duty, the 1974 proto-slasher film Black Christmas, also known as Silent Night, Evil Night, also known as A Stranger in the House. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans we have, so warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, creator of the Alex Van Helsing novels. With me, from Austin, is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars and co-creator of the comic Psycom from Tokyo Pop, and Clockworks from Humanoid. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, as always, Mr. Drew Edwards, creator and writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man from Monsterverse Comics. Say hello, Drew.
It's me, Billy.
Oh, my God. And finally, also joining us from Denver, ignoring the pervy phone calls that come out whenever she hangs up the phone, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
I have no idea what that means, but hello.
Hello. Okay, according to Wikipedia, Black Christmas, also released under the title Silent Night, Evil Night, and Stranger in the House, is a 1974 Canadian independent horror film directed by Bob Clark and written by A. Roy Moore. It stars the lovely Olivia Hussey, Keira Dullea, Margot Kidder, Andrea Martin, Marion Waldman, and John Saxon, the Kung Fu star. The story follows a group of sorority sisters who are stalked and murdered over Christmas vacation by a killer hiding in their sorority house. It was inspired by the urban legend The Babysitter and the Man Upstairs, but was also largely based, so-called, it says, on a series of murders that took place in Quebec. I have my doubts. Black Christmas is generally considered to be one of the first slasher films. We'll talk about that. There's also a remake of this movie. Just so you know, a remake of this film was made in 2006 and featured Michelle Trachtenberg, who you may know as Dawn on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and also Elijah Wood, the Hobbit. So let's get our opening thoughts. Drew, I know you really wanted to talk to this one, but we started with you last week, so let's go Julia, then Drew, then Tony, because I know you have some opinions about these characters, and then I'll say something. So Julia, Black Christmas. What are your thoughts?
Well, I liked like 90% of it. I really did. I like that it's a sort of a slasher film, but it's not gory. It's as the director likes to think of it, a psychological horror film, which made me laugh because we talked about how all the directors want to call them their movies that. But in this case, there's not any, blood and guts, and so I like that because, of course, I don't like those. And then I think that the phone calls, the voices on the phone, I think that's one of the scariest things I've ever seen in a movie. It's just so disturbing and horrifying. So, I think it was really interesting, and I'm looking forward to talking about the 70s and how foreign and weird it feels to me to see the 70s portrayed in movies. But I didn't like the ending, though.
All right. Okay. Drew, so why have you brought us this Christmas morsel?
Well, first of all, this is one of the, we've done Gremlins, we've done Rare Exports, we've done quite a few other Christmas-themed horror films. To me, this is probably in a lot of horror fans' minds the classic Christmas horror film. To me, it's second banana to Gremlins, but it's still a very, very, very interesting film. I have really very clear memories of this movie from when I was a kid, because it was a movie I was actually always too scared to rent until I got to be about 10. And I remember it distinctly because it was, first of all, it was Silent Night, Evil Night. That's what the video store in my hometown had it as, and it had this great VHS cover where it had a Christmas wreath.
Yeah.
And then there was the image of the girl that had been suffocated with the plastic wrap around her face, and it was a very big close-up of that, and it would just give me the creeps just looking at it. And finally, when I was, I believe, about 10 or 11. I finally worked up the nerve to see it, and it really, 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 really freaked me out. And I actually have not seen it since then. So this is actually the second time I've seen this movie. And
no way. Wow.
Yes way. And man, this is a really interesting movie. I feel like it really hits the sort of chaotic nature of tragedy, and about how you can be minding your own business and living your own life, and there can be stuff that's happening to you that is really important, and you're wrapped up in that, and something terrible can just hit you like a ton of bricks out of the middle of nowhere. And I also think it just nails the loneliness of the Christmas season very well. Like, it's a really nice looking movie considering how much it costs to make, and it's got a very, again, it's got all the Christmas colors that really pops, but the way they're shot, it makes them look sad. So I take a lot away from this movie. I don't think it's perfect. I have some problems with the very, very last scene, which we will no doubt get into. But I just think that this is an incredibly creepy film, and an incredibly, particularly for, I guess if we're going to call it a slasher movie, like, the characters are very, very well done. They're very, true to life, which in a lot of, movies that came after this you didn't necessarily get.
Wow, that gives us a lot to talk about. All right, Tony, Black Christmas, Silent Night, Deadly Night. I'm sorry,
yeah,
Silent Night, Evil Night.
I wish I watched the movie that Drew watched. Maybe I didn't because I'd been up at a 24-hour movie marathon. I don't know what, but I really could never watch this movie ever in my life. I'd be perfectly fine with it.
You're crazy.
I thought the characters were awful people. I didn't want to see them. There's a few standouts where you're like, oh, I'm kind of sympathetic for that person. But in general, like, most of them are terrible people that you'd never, I don't want to meet them. I don't want to see them. I don't know if I want them to hate them enough to have them be killed, but I sure didn't care what happened to them.
I love it when we disagree like this. This is fun.
And I don't know. I wish I saw the movie you saw. I think it maybe because it's a prototypical slasher that I've seen so many since then that I just was like,
but
okay,
I actually don't think this is a slasher movie. I think it is a movie that
follows the formula so close.
Slasher.
I think that's semantics, and we can get into that. But I think that's semantics. It's all the things that a slasher movie does. I think the only thing it gives us that other slasher movies don't is the now cliche, it's coming from inside the house. And you're like, oh, okay, but now I've seen that so many times. So again, maybe it's the product of having things.
This is the first movie to do that. It's just...
I understand that. What
okay, all right.
And that's also based off of an urban legend, so that's fair game.
Let Tony
Tony is wrong.
Before we continue debating, let him finish.
No, I just think that it didn't really, it's not a movie that really bears, for me, repeat watches. I'm okay that I saw it, but it doesn't, like I said, maybe I saw it in the wrong frame of mind, but I don't know. I've just seen so many of these movies that going back and seeing this one was like, I remembered it because I'd seen it once before, and I can't remember when, but it didn't give me any incentive to revisit it. And I think I saw I can't remember if the remake showed it at Phenomathon one time or not, but I know I've seen the remake.
I could swear that we watched, When a Stranger Calls about Phenomathon once. Okay, all right, very well, good. I'm glad that we have an alternate view. It's funny, Drew, that you mentioned that this movie presents Christmas pretty well. When I think of movies that present this period in a way that's very lonely and strange, the one that pops to mind to me is 1975, which is 3 Days of the Condor. And that spends a lot of time showing a lot of sort of vistas. You have a lot of sort of wide shots showing the city or plazas or what have you, and you get a feel for the coldness and barrenness of the city. in this case, you're in kind of a small town, a college town, and most of your time is on your college campus. It's suburban Toronto, it looks like. And I agree with you, but the thing that I was really getting into with Julia was just how alien this presentation of the 70s is from our lives now. I mean, in a way, the 70s is so far from our experience as it's presented in this movie that it's almost a science fiction film. That's even more so than like the 40s. When you look at the Wolfman, the people in the Wolfman in many ways are more relatable to me. And this is not to say I don't like them, but I understand the 40s better than I do the 70s in many ways.
Yeah, that's what I was saying to Jason when we were watching it. I was just like, this feels so foreign to me because it's just, I mean, the way that they dress, the way that they behave, and even just the culture that we know is in the background.
Save some of that because I want to come back to the 70s as a topic. So generally, Tony, I hear what you're saying. I actually, really did enjoy this, but boy, it's a quick movie. So to be honest, you can like it or dislike it, but it goes by in a flash. But I'm not sure. I would recommend it, but I'm not sure I would give it a very high grade because in the end, I found the ending, which we're going to talk about, to be, it did not work for me, and maybe somebody will defend it in a way that say that I've totally misread the ending, but so we'll get to it. Okay, so first of all, this movie is where to start? This movie is in many ways an early slasher, and I've heard people say this, and Drew, you can judge, is this bull or is this true? I've heard people call this an early slasher. I've heard people call this the first holiday slasher. And I've heard people call this the first movie to use the first person, fisheye tracking shot. So when I think through that, is any of that true? I think
the fisheye thing, like the character eye view thing, actually goes back to the Ruben Mamoulian Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And as far as I know, that is the first movie to really make use of that. There probably is others even earlier than that, because it seems like a very obvious thing to do to sort of put you in a character's point of view. I think what this movie does is you see an obvious lineage with this, on a lot of levels, with like the Halloween being big. This movie's a very, very, very big influence on the way Halloween looks and feels, but you can see that even into like the early Friday the 13th movies as well. So I think there's that direct tie there. To me, this is a slasher movie the same way Psycho is a slasher movie. It has a lot of the stuff that we associate with the slasher genre, but they're not fully, they're not fully present yet. For example, like we have a final girl, but she's definitely not virginal. Mm-hmm. Yes, in fact, that's a big plot point in the movie. So,
yeah, you have that book. So if we treat this as part of the dawn of slasher films, you have that book by Carol Clover, Men, Women, and Chainsaws, which lays out that there is a formula that all slasher movies follow. Once you get to stuff like The House on Sorority Row and whatever, where there's kills. There's different girls are going to manifest different personalities. They're going to get killed. We're going to identify with the killer. Towards the end, we'll swap and identify with the final girl, who usually has a virginal aspect and also a kind of male aspect, and she'll sort of use her ingenuity to finally kill the bad guy. This isn't quite that. But to get back to like where we start with the very beginning, I mentioned this tracking shot because this movie, it's Christmas time, 1973-ish. In some college town somewhere in North America, presumably Toronto. And we're at a sorority house where a bunch of college girls are having a big party, and many of them are sticking around over the Christmas holidays. And we meet the different personalities. We meet Margot Kidder, who we all know as Lois Lane. This is 4 years before she will be Lois Lane, and she plays.
Of the same age.
No, yeah, absolutely, and she's in her late 20s. She looks like she's, it's impossible to pin down Margot Kidder's age at this point in time because she could be almost, she could be anywhere from 25 to 45. But she looks, she looks good. She just looks
mature.
She's always looked mature, and she's the boozy, sort of slutty one. And and she's the one with.
I'm sorry, the boozy sort of slutty one.
Yes. Well, no, but
are there any who are not?
Well, there's some who aren't as slutty.
Yeah,
but they're all boozy. They're all terrible people. Like she's one of the worst people.
How are they terrible people?
I don't think they're terrible.
I don't think they're
terrible.
These are
they're kids.
Know. They're not okay. They're not people all of these people are not anyone I would ever want to hang out with ever.
Margot Kidder.
They fit the slasher mold in the fact that yep, it's okay that they all die. Cause
I don't know. I mean,
I actually feel like that these characters are a lot more maybe they're not sterling human beings in every single way, but they're definitely more fleshed out than a lot of victims we see in other horror films.
These are
people
fleshed out. I again, like I said, I don't.
All right. So
none of them are people I want to hang out with. Let's
get specific. Margot Kidder, her problem is that she is abrasive. She's insulting to people. She makes dirty jokes to anybody and everybody. So she's that's her character, is that she's living out loud and sort of flaunting her sexuality and smoking too much and teasing the other girls. That's her thing. And she drinks too much. She drinks too much compared to all these others who are all a bunch of lushes. Then there's Andrea Martin, who, by the way, I have a huge nerd crush on Andrea Martin because she is the funny girl from SCTV, and she is here wearing the most ridiculous clothing through the whole thing. Because Margot Kidder, who's semi-hot in this period, is always wearing this blouse that's open down to her navel and all this BS. But Andrea Martin, they have wearing constantly these ridiculous polka dot things and jumpers and crazy infantilizing frumpy clothing. Her hair is this giant mound of fro that's just sort of all around her. She has these glasses that sort of hide her face. And it's so they've gone out of their way to make Andrea Martin look as nerdy as humanly possible. So you've got those two, and then you've got Olivia Hussey, who is
so beautiful. She's Juliet from Romeo and Juliet.
Right. Olivia Hussey, who has the most oddball accent ever known to man and is sex on a stick.
Well, because she was born in Argentina and lived there for a while, but her mom was British, and then they moved to London. So she learned to speak English from a British mom, but lived in Argentina for a while. So it's very strange.
Drunk slut Margot Kidder. You've got four-eyed nerd Andrea Martin, and then you've got international model Olivia Hussey, and then you've got this other nice girl who's offended by Margot Kidder and goes upstairs to remind us that this is a slasher movie, basically, because some dude has walked into the sorority house while this party is going on. We see him go in and immediately take a hiding place and wait. And two things happen. First, he's going to make a phone call, and then he's going to kill the girl. But does somebody, Julia, describe, if you will, unless somebody else wants to take it, this first phone call where we get the motif that this guy is going to be using for the
it's not even the first phone call. I mean, apparently they've been getting dirty phone calls from this guy for a long time. He just hasn't been killing people, as far as we know. But so all the girls have gathered, which, again, so foreign to me to have this particular kind. Because, I lived in a girls' dorm, and it was nothing like this because I wasn't in the 70s. It wasn't in the 70s. But anyway, so they're all giggling and drinking and gathering around the phone as they listen to this dirty phone call, and they don't hang it up, which is baffling to me. As this guy, first it's, like I said, disturbing. They used, to do the effect, they used 3 different voices, but it's supposed to be one person doing crazy voices. And he's shrieking and making awful noises, but mostly he's just being really obscene and saying, just nasty stuff. And so all the girls are listening, and then finally, Margaret Kidder gets on there and starts yelling at the guy. But it takes a good long time, and they're clearly not that upset. This guy is calling them. They
don't think he's a threat. They think he's creepy.
Yeah.
But they think he's.
But the main thing is throughout the movie the calls refer repeatedly to Billy, and that's the reason I don't like the ending is because that's never explained as far as I can tell.
And let's say that before we get to the disappointment of.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that's annoying.
We hear him say something about he adapts a different voice and he calls himself Billy.
Yeah.
He makes reference to a character that may be a girlfriend or a sister or something or other called Agnes. He makes references to shame and being punished, and also just a lot of random sexual come-ons. I'm going to lick you. I'm going to do all this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to cut you. And so it's very strange. And
but to me, the creepiest thing about it is not all the weird voices. It's that you get the succession of like weird and lewd things, and then in the most normal voice possible, he says, "I'm going to kill you," and then hangs up. Like that's what makes it chilling to me.
Yeah. No, you're right. That's a really good point. Yeah, that's expert because she'll go, "I'm going to call the police and doing all this," and then suddenly he sounds like he's gotten real serious, and I'm going to kill you. And you hear the sound, the echo through the phone, and it's that's totally scary. And what happens next is the random girl, I think her name was Claire, the first one, the one that we didn't list earlier because all she is kind of a pretty nice girl, and she goes upstairs, I guess, to start getting her clothes together because she's going to go home for Christmas because her dad's going to come pick her up. And she gets attacked with, what is it? It's like the bag that you put dry cleaning in. She gets attacked. I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh. It's not funny. But she gets attacked.
She goes to a closet to get something out, and there's these empty dry cleaning bags, which of course is so ominous. You're just like, oh crap. Well, we know what the murder weapon's going to be. And then of course, as she walks away, you see them kind of wrestle a little bit and move. And then then he goes after her and he suffocates her, and he leaves her like that for the rest of the movie. And this poor actress has to be in this bag for every time they show her. Yeah. And they just has a hole cut in the bag so that she can breathe. But it's amazing. It's terrible.
It's an amazing effect. It's iconic to this movie. You guys talked about seeing the poster for this or seeing the clamshell. Back when we would go to video stores and hang out in who among us did not just spend hours hanging out in the horror section of our local video store, right? And you'd see these.
I didn't actually.
You did not. But I know that Drew and Tony did, and you'd see these same, exploitation videos over and over again, and a lot of them they were pretty grungy, and I was like, there's no way I'm renting that thing, like I Spit on Your Grave or even I still haven't seen I Spit on Your Grave. I'm sure I've heard now that it has a lot to recommend it, or Last House on the Left, it just various things. And yes, I remember this poster, Silent Night, Evil Night, with the girl in the wreath. I'm looking at the image right now, and it's got this girl with this plastic bag wrapped around her head. It also
has that great exploitation tagline. If this movie doesn't make your skin crawl, it's on too tight.
Yes. What complete nonsense. Yeah. I love this stuff. It's funny though when you think about that dry cleaner bag. That reminds me of something that happened in Mad Men in the first season. One of the whole points of Mad Men is that they're always showing off how the '60s, is different from our time. And there's a point where Sally Draper, all the women are having tea and smoking cigarettes in the kitchen, and the kids come running through the kitchen, and Sally Draper comes through, and she's wearing a dry cleaning bag over her head and over her entire body, and and the mom, kind of flicks her cigarette and says, "Sally Draper, if the clothes that were in that bag are on the floor, or on the bottom of the closet, you've got another thing coming."
Yeah, and everybody is watching that, just going, "Oh my gosh! Tell your child not to put a plastic bag over her head." Does she know anything?
Yeah, I love that. But yeah, I've never associated, though. I mean, I've thought about that kind of stuff, but I've never associated the dry cleaning bag with horror. But it clearly now I will. I mean, that's pretty amazing. That's our first death, and it's shortly after that we become aware that there are problems going on in this town. Basically, in other words, before the police are alerted or anything like that, there's another crime that's gone on, which is that a girl has disappeared in the town, and people have started to turn their attention to hunting for a missing little girl. So, can somebody explain? Is it the deal that the guy? I guess it is, but we never. It's not really clear to me.
Yeah, that's another flaw of the movie. You never really know what happened to this kid. You know, she was murdered. You know, she's in the park. That she's found in the park.
I kind of like that because again, it plays into that whole randomness. Like if you were going, living this out, like say something like this is happening to you, you don't get all the bullet points. You don't get all the details. You're just sort of along for the ride. Like when something chaotic happens in real life, it really, really knocks you for a loop. And I feel like that this movie, better than a lot of movies that I saw, really captures that chaotic feel of things.
No, I actually think that's kind of cool in a lot of ways. Even though, like I said, it's in my favorite movie, like the idea, the red herring / kind of like, and there's also lots of stuff going on because it's the holidays and random stuff happens all over.
Yes.
Yeah, I was down with that. I think that's pretty clever, the way that it plays out and the way that it's kind of put together, because you never quite know. I think that's kind of one of the few points that isn't like what eventually became the modern kind of really rigid. This is a slasher movie. It works this way. I think that's one of the things that throws that out and throws it on its ear, and I think that's cool.
Well, that's that is definitely something that we see carried over into a lot of the John Carpenter, not just Halloween, but a lot of John Carpenter's films, is they have these sort of open-ended quality to them. I've heard stories that Halloween is we'll never know how much John Carpenter was influenced by this movie, but it's pretty clear when you're watching it that there's a direct lineage from this to Halloween, and it's more than just the holiday setting.
Well, I agree that there's a connection, but this is probably a good moment before we get into the next section of the film to talk a little bit about Bob Clark. Bob Clark, the director. Now, I do believe that this movie is an influence on Halloween, but I think John Carpenter's Halloween is a masterful work, and
no, I think Halloween's a better movie than this. I'm not just going to disagree with that.
So Bob Clark is the director here. Now, he actually is, this guy has an extraordinarily diverse resume. Let me name three that just blow my mind that he directed all three of these films besides Black Christmas. So he made this proto-slasher film, but he also made Murder by Decree, which is one of my favorite Sherlock Holmes movies.
That is a great movie.
That is a fantastic movie. One of Christopher Plummer's finest roles. He made Porky's, which is a just genre-creating film. I mean, a movie that practically invented the horny teenager genre. And then he made A Christmas Story, which is such a crazy crackpot, look at suburban.
And tell us why you hate that movie.
Oh, I don't like The Christmas Story, but the only reason I don't like it is just because I don't know. I identify too much with the kid. The kid in The Christmas Story is he's very, very. We actually went over this just a couple weeks ago, so I don't want to bore the listener. But the kid in The Christmas Story is so earnest and has such great hopes for the things he will be able to accomplish with his meager talents, and I really associate myself with him. I associate his future disappointments with mine, and so I watching the film gives me a great deal of pain.
And so this is the part where we psychoanalyze Jason. So the fact that you are the successful author that you are.
That's not the point.
This kid has quite a great future, if you ask me, but whatever.
But it's just that it's being reminded of hope is depressing to me.
Mm-hmm.
Being reminded of hope is depressing to you. Man, that is the most cynical thing I have ever heard anybody say. Wow. I think I'm just going to start calling you Ebenezer Henderson. Bah humbug.
No.
Wow.
My life is full of hope. My life is.
You have a pretty good life. What the hell are you talking about?
That's why he's so depressed. His life is
Black Christmas indeed.
But the thing of it is, I don't know. I
know. I think I know where you're coming from, Jason. I actually dig what you're trying to say. Like, I don't think it's quite as cynical as Drew may be reading it. I kind of get you, because there is that, like, there's a certain depressing thing when because not everybody is going to be famous, and not everybody is going to have all their hopes and dreams come true. And when you see that potential and it's not realized, I think it is disheartening and can be depressing and stuff. And I think that's I get you. I don't.
Well, the thing that depresses me most are things like, or just the beautiful naivete of the character, as he wants to understand the decoder ring, and he has yet to learn all these lessons about the commercialism of things, and he has yet to develop like a cynical skin that would allow him even to admire the commercialism of things or to enjoy the kitschiness of things. He's not there yet. So instead, he's just sort of punched over and over again. And that's rough. I mean, to me, it's like Charlie Brown, He's a lot like Charlie Brown.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you feel like that film relates back to this other Yuletide offering?
It's funny that they're both Christmassy, and that they present a way of looking at Christmas that is different from, how, if you spend some time during this month watching a lot of Christmas movies on like the Hallmark and Lifetime channels, you see a lot of really beautiful small town Christmases. A lot of ladies and really lovely coats, and dudes in awesome sweaters, and they walking around, and there's like Christmas lights strung up all over town. But these two movies present Christmas, even if the people are having a good time or enjoying themselves, Christmas is fairly threadbare, Everything is kind of old and grungy. And it's funny because they're different time periods, Christmas Story takes place in the 40s. This movie takes place in 1974. But they both present, people who are getting by and enjoying Christmas and maybe having a really good time amidst, a world that I see as, really sort of decaying all around them.
Well, maybe what you're just describing, though, is a more lived-in Christmas. It doesn't have that kind of fakeness that we associate with, other Christmas movies, which is actually something I think I appreciate about these movies. I'm not a huge fan of A Christmas Story.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Drew. Yeah, I apologize. Go ahead.
No. It's what I said. I'm not a huge fan of A Christmas Story, but I like it. And I think what's funny is like watching this made me appreciate it more, because I could see the sort of stylistic handling of Christmas and the way they related back to each other.
He has this means of creating texture that you really have to admire. I mean, I don't know if it's just from having a bunch of practical sets or what, but he's able to, I like that word you used, that lived in, that he's able to present a world that you can get the impression that people really are doing things, eating meals, going to school, doing all their stuff in between the scenes where we're seeing them, that that they continue on whenever the camera's not looking at them, and that's true of both of those movies. Yeah, I mean, he's good. This guy has talent, and I haven't watched Porky's probably in 20 years, but I have no doubt that it's going to turn out to be the same. And it's funny because that one's the 50s, so he gave us A Christmas Story, which is about a little boy in the 40s, and then Porky's, which is about a teenager in the 50s. So when you think about it, the character from Christmas Story may well grow 6 or 7 years to be one of the boys in Porky's. And now I am going to watch that movie because that is totally going to change how I view Porky's.
Well, if you wanted to take it a step further, maybe he lost his mind at one point and started hanging out in a sorority attic.
Yes.
If they had just given him that Red Ryder BB gun.
Yeah, maybe this beanie is in
Billy
fact
is him.
Peter Billingsley.
I love it. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, there could be just a tied together, coherent Bob Clark universe, which
yes.
is a wonderful, wonderful thought.
No wonder your hope is so depressing to you. He becomes a serial killer. Goodness.
Yes. I'll shoot your eye out. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so getting back to what's going on in this picture.
What movie are you talking about?
Yeah. And I've decided that definitely my endorsement is going to be another Bob Clark movie. So he gives us something that is fundamentally tragic, and I'm not near. My skin has grown a lot thicker than it used to be, but it is very tragic that you've got the father of this girl who just got iced, and her body's hidden up in the attic. And so the father has shown up because I guess he's going to drive his daughter home for Christmas. Maybe he's going to pick up some of her stuff from the dorm, like you do. And nobody knows where she is. And this is kind of hilarious because he's like asking the sorority sisters, none of them are taking him seriously at all.
Well, and then he's over at the sorority house, and it's really kind of this is what I was saying about how just different a world it is, because they've got like pictures of nude people on the wall, and they've got like just kind of all kinds of stuff, and the house mother clearly is fine with all of it. She's a drunk. She hides her alcohol in books, and he's over there just kind of going, "What am I paying for? This is awful." What Yes. It's really sad.
What's funny is, and I mean you no disrespect at all, but I mean that's a quite conservative look at the way this place is presented.
It is no. It's a girls. If it is a college girls' dorm, then it's supposed to be. It's not. I'm not saying the girls should behave a certain way. I'm saying that the house mother should behave a certain way, and the house itself should be a certain way, because you don't. It's different from like well, is it a sorority house though, or a dorm? It's a sorority house?
It is a sorority house.
Okay, maybe that. No, but I still think that's how. I mean, sorority houses. I wasn't in a sorority, but from my experience, even those like. The decor and the sort of the rules that we're pretending to be observed are usually pretty
demure.
Conservative. Yeah, demure. It's the behavior when the house mother's not watching is a different story, but as far as that goes, the fact that she is so okay with all of it is very different from anything I ever knew about.
And they have a lot of, and it's very Vietnam. I mean, they've got a lot of peace signs, and they've got some sexualized anti-war posters and stuff like that. And in like, posters of men. But and you can identify with this, right? I mean, where you go to college. And so there's a sort of hypersexuality, a kind of flaunting of sexuality, the same way there's a flaunting of drinking too much. Because.
But again, this is always, in my experience, is catch from the house mother. It's not. She doesn't participate in it. Yeah. I mean, I guess unless she was really cool, but I didn't get the impression this one was particularly cool.
Well, but they jack with the house mother too. Remember, they're doing all kinds of things where they talk to her a certain way. She pretends she doesn't know they're a bunch of drunken sluts.
Right.
Vice versa.
Yeah.
So there's.
Yeah, she's like Miss Hannigan.
Everybody is participating in this ruse. But as you point out, if you bring one outsider in, he immediately looks around and goes, "What kind of a crazy den of iniquity, is this place?"
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is the one thing. Like I can kind of get behind what Tony was saying earlier. Like I really do feel bad for the father. Like, they are just sort of like
it's horrible.
railroading him around, and he's like, yeah, okay, maybe he's a little bit of a nebbish kind of guy, but he's
he reminds me of the character in Rocky Horror Picture Show. The professor, not the professor.
Dr. Scott.
Yeah, Dr. Scott. Yeah. No, is it Dr. Scott?
Are you talking about Brad?
It's not Brad. No, I guess it is Dr. Scott. I'm just thinking
Dr.
at the
Scott,
end.
yeah, Dr. Von Scott.
Wheelchair.
When he's got the stockings on himself and everything, and he's kind of taking over. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Absolutely. You're right. They mistreat him, but again, remember, they don't know that the daughter's to their mind.
I don't know that she's dead, and I don't find the way they're behaving to be unrealistic for the way teenagers behave sometimes. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah,
I
mean, in general, but I guess, but like, they're trying to help their friend. They go to the police station, and she's like, "Oh, we live on Palacio Street, ha ha." Like, it's like, yeah, what's it gonna hurt to actually not be a dick, and give the police the right information to try to help your friend? Stuff
totally
like that where I'm constantly like, come on. I mean, even if the police are kind of being jerks too, like, but the whole situation is just like, wow, I can't stand, I wouldn't want to be around them in real life, and that's okay, because there's lots of films that have people that you don't want to be around in real life.
I wouldn't want to hang around with a bunch of sorority girls either, but I mean, it is what it is. Like, I totally get what you're saying. Like, it wasn't to the detriment. I just sort of took that as like, these are teenage girls being teenage girls, and teenagers act that way sometimes.
Well, and some are worse than others. Margot Kidder is truly pretty bad.
Yeah.
She's because she's being mean to everybody. She's teasing.
Well, also, like, I mean, yeah, and the artist, like, composer boyfriend's a total ass as well.
Yes.
Like,
I should note something else that Margot Kidder says. When they say, hey, there's mad men out there, somebody just raped a girl from town. And she goes, excuse me, darling, but you don't rape a townie. I mean, oh, my God.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like,
well, no, nobody's disagreeing that Margot Kidder is horrible. And obviously the boyfriend of, what's the guy's name? That's
Olivia Hussey's baby daddy.
What's his name? He's like, anyway, he's awful because he's supposed to be you're supposed to assume that he's the killer.
Right. So let's talk about him a little bit. You've got Olivia Hussey is, this, like I say, she's the supermodel who lives in the place, and she has a boyfriend who is a brilliant pianist, but he's very frustrated. He's been there for a number of years at the conservatory where he's studying, and he's had enough.
Peter,
yeah, and the plot between them gets going because he's very frustrated. He has a really bad.
He kills the piano.
Yeah, he has a really bad recital, or whatever you call it when you're actually
audition
playing
or whatever.
Well, I don't think it's an audition. I think it's for a grade. I mean, I think this is part of his
right.
And goes badly. He attacks his piano and destroys it, or at least the studio's piano, regardless. He destroys a grand piano. And then he goes home to his girlfriend, and his girlfriend says, I'm pregnant, and I don't want to have the baby. And this drives him nuts. And you can think what you want about abortion or not abortion, but regardless, in Canada in 1974, we're given to understand in this film that this is an option for her. She wants to make this choice. That's driving him crazy, and so he is just sort of he's out of sorts, and acting odd, for the rest of the film. We see him stalking her. Yeah.
The fact that they do sort of align your sympathies with her. Mm-hmm. This is something I was wrestling a bit on my own with. Like, does that make this movie progressive for its time, or was that sort of where society was already going?
I don't think so, because I think this is actually where the culture was more so I definitely don't want to get into the politics of abortion, but I would say that in the 70s, you were much more likely to get by with an abortion plot line, just a plot line that covered it, more so than now.
Well, again, the other thing that's interesting about that, though, is, when we think about the movies, you talk about a slasher movie, and, this is definitely, whether or not I want to call it a slasher movie, like I will say this is definitely a blueprint that slasher movies copied. But this girl is not a virgin. He's not virginal, in the slightest. And that's really fascinating to me for some reason. Like, I like the fact that this, okay, we're dealing with college kids, but there's this sort of adult, very heavy, something that would be more, a place in a drama going on.
Yes. Right, it is, and it's also I got to point out at the time this was true of comedies too. If you were watching some of these teenage sex comedies and stuff, they would usually have at least one plot that was like a real downer, that would involve like some person getting beaten and raped, or some person getting pregnant and having an abortion, or whatever. There was always this, so in many ways it was like movies of this period were experimenting a lot more with kind of just swerving this way and that. There's a lot less of the rules, in evidence. And by the way, she may not be virginal, and yet she's the most virginal character in this movie, except possibly Andrea Martin. I mean, she's presented as being she's very sweet. She's the sweet one. I mean, again, I keep having to say, except of course for Andrea Martin, I don't know how to fit Andrea Martin into that, other than that if I didn't know who Andrea Martin was and recognize her as one of my favorite people from SCTV, maybe I wouldn't even have any opinion about her at all. So, but clearly, Olivia Hussey, she's beautiful, she's sweet, the fact she's pregnant.
I think the opinion that you are meant to have about Andrea Martin is that I'm trying to figure out a nice way to say this. She's not virginal on purpose.
You mean she's accidentally virginal?
she's yeah.
Right. No,
it's funny how culturally things are changed again with the whole thing from 70s to now. Like, I guess she's supposed to be a nerd, but I kept thinking of her as like the ironic hipster friend.
Yes. No, good point. That's totally good point. But I think for her time, she's a nerd. She's completely, she's buttoned up to her neck. There's nothing ironic about the way she dresses. She just happens to wear ugly glasses. And God, Andrea Martin, if you're listening, I mean, no disrespect at all. It's not.
No, you already said you had a huge crush on her. I think she likes you.
No, there we go. Nerd crush all the way. So, she's funny. She's still on Sesame Street, so rock on, Andrea Martin. I was also thinking about the fact that you take Olivia Hussey and Andrea Martin, and one of these two women is under a lot less pressure to stay beautiful. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Andrea Martin can do whatever she wants, basically, for the rest of her life, and Olivia Hussey, will be under extraordinary pressure. Okay, so basically, Dad's shown up. They're doing all kinds. They've followed him to the police station. They've given the police their half-assed messages about how our girlfriend hasn't shown up. Nobody's taking it seriously, and nobody's going to take it seriously until the little girl turns up dead in the park. And then they're going to go, it is weird that Claire has not shown up. Now, by the way, this is not a big body count. Now, at this point, this movie's like halfway over, and exactly 2 people are dead. A girl in the park.
When does the den mother get it?
This is what I'm saying. It's right about here. The girl in the park is dead.
Yeah, I found it really frustrating how, and again, like I said, she's a lot like Miss Hannigan in Annie, because, except that she's not trying to seduce the dad, but just the way she's like hiding stuff from him and everything.
Yeah.
But then, but I found it really frustrating that she keeps hearing her cat, but she never quite gets around to going and looking for her cat.
Right. And
her cat's clearly trapped somewhere, so it takes a good long time. So then she finally does go looking for the cat.
Yeah, tell us about her, what happens to her.
Oh, my God, it's horrible.
Because that happens next.
Yeah, so she goes looking for the cat. She's hearing the cat's being action somewhere. She doesn't know where, and the cat, of course, has been licking at this poor dead girl. And so she finally figures out that somehow the cat's in the attic, and you see. So the whole time you've been seeing this murderer mostly from his perspective. Like you see him from the camera's perspective, and occasionally you see like a hand or an arm or something. And anyway, so at this point that you see that his arm is holding a hook, and so she's coming up into the attic, and it's one of those, the doors in the floor of the attic. She comes up, she sees the dead girl, and then she turns around, and we see from his perspective that she turns and looks at him, and is I guess about to scream. I don't even know if she gets the scream out before he lets this hook, like that's hanging hook from the. I don't even know how he did it. Go and like just hooks her and hangs her, but she doesn't die right away. She's like making awful sounds as she's dying, and we hear that. We don't ever see the hook hit her, but we just see her feet dangling, and then eventually you do see that she's now hanging in the attic. It's just ugh.
Yeah, but we see that there's almost no.
There's no gore. I know,
but
it's gruesome. It is a gruesome thing.
Yeah, that's right. It is very. It's not at all. This is not a splatter movie. At least in the version I saw. The version I saw, you don't see people go in. You don't see any blood splatter around. It's all off screen. It may as well have been done, for TV. And that gives us two bodies in the attic. So the killer's there. There's now two bodies in the attic, and now it's time for the movie to start cranking up, because now is in rapid succession. People are going to start dying. The next person to die is so everybody starts to get freaked out. Margot Kidder goes up to. Let's see. I think Margot Kidder goes first because she goes up to sleep because she is drunk. And when she is finally attacked by the killer, Beanie, he kills her with a glass menagerie, which I think is hilarious.
He stabs her to death with a glass unicorn.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is so great because it's a college and because these are artsy people and they're probably presenting a lot of Tennessee Williams. So I'm thinking about the glass menagerie and about the gentleman caller with the little glass figurines. And so the notion of a gentleman caller who's broken into a sorority house and killed somebody with a glass unicorn is, I think, really clever, and scary. I do feel sorry that, look, Margot Kidder plays a terrible, terrible person, I don't think she deserves to be stabbed with a unicorn, but, she's...
Yeah, for real.
We don't mourn her particularly. Then they don't notice her gone because the fact is this movie manipulates everything such that people get killed and nobody goes looking for them in their actual, particularly, So she's dead for a while until eventually Andrea Martin now is getting worried. I'm so worried about Claire because they're still getting these crazy calls. And by the way, the movie is now clipping along just to get rid of everybody so it can leave us just with Olivia Hussey and the cops who are calling her and thinking about her because they're worried about the house. So now Andrea Martin goes upstairs, and Andrea Martin gets iced. We don't even see how Andrea Martin dies. She just, goes up, door shuts behind her.
She goes into Margot Kidder's room, sees that Margot Kidder is dead, the door gets shut, and we hear some gruesome sounding noises.
Yeah, and that's it. So, and then after that, now we're into the last part of the movie, which is where we finally pick up with the urban legend piece of this movie, the babysitter and the killer upstairs, which is something that even in 1974 would have been totally familiar to everybody. So I guess everybody knows what's coming. It's really more like, how can we drag out, the suspense of it, which is this. Olivia Hussey keeps getting these obscene phone calls from this guy saying all the things we were talking about earlier, the sexual stuff, the I'm Billy, the different voices, and the police go, hey, we're going to tap your line. They come over, put a little thing on our phone. We're going to tap your line. This guy calls, keep him on the line long enough, and we'll trace it. All right, let me ask you guys. That has always been bullshit in the digital age, but have you ever seen anything like the way tracing a line is presented in this film. By which I mean, it's presented with, we have to send a cop, a technical cop, a guy who knows a lot about phones, send a cop
factory
to a central office of the phone company, which has enormous mechanical shit going on that I don't even understand at all. And when a phone starts to ring, he's got one on his hip that is connected somehow. And when the phone starts to ring, he has to run physically up and down this thing the size of a factory to try to find which circuit this call is coming through on. That was amazing. I mean, yeah,
it was really bizarre. I'd never seen anything like it either.
I have no idea if it's bullshit. I literally have no idea.
I think that if it is bullshit, they're probably gambling that you don't know enough about phones and tapping phones to really get that. But
yeah,
especially doing it in the 70s. I mean, nowadays, you're right, that they're assuming that the audience of the movie in the 70s doesn't know. Yeah.
It totally looks believable. There's nothing about this, I mean, because it's also so mechanical and
I'm sure it's a real thing. I mean, they wouldn't have created that as a set. That's probably a real.
Yeah.
It's a lot of extra business for something they wouldn't necessarily have to shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about, if you think about 3 Days of the Condor, which is a year later, when they're tracing the line, Robert Redford goes down into a central office, and he reroutes a lot of stuff. And then later, when the FBI is tracing the call, they have a big, mechanical map with a sort of a mechanical compass that slides around on the map and traces where these different connections are coming from. But first of all, that's a spy movie, and second of all, it's the CIA or whatever. So I totally believe the stuff going on here, where phone rings, the guy's like, okay, now I got to start running around this factory to try to figure out which one of these metal columns seems to be the one that the call is coming from, and then hook up my little thing, and then read something out, and all that stuff. And
I just appreciated that we saw cops actually doing something in the movie.
That's right. And
John Saxon is on the case.
Yes, man. I mean, he's working really, really hard. I mean, John Saxon may be working less hard because he's sitting behind a desk ordering people around most of the time. But this guy in the phone company, I was really amazed by this. And I think if you want to watch this movie for anything, watch it for what I regard as the most novel phone tapping sequence I've ever seen. Anyway, all of this comes to, they finally work out, what the address of the phone is, and the person making the phone calls is coming from inside the house. And that's the big payoff, by the way. That's the huge thing, is the phone, and so now we get to the next piece of...
Now we get to the point where we get to start yelling at the screen.
Yes.
Like we're in an African-American movie theater somewhere.
He says to the idiot cop, back at the station, he goes, listen, call Olivia Hussey on the phone. John Saxon does, because John Saxon is, I don't know, I can't remember. He's on a stakeout somewhere or whatever. He calls the cop, and he says, listen, call Olivia Hussey, tell her, put down the phone, go outside. Don't tell her the call is coming from the house. Just say, walk outside, don't look back. This is all
and of
stuff.
course, she follows the directions exactly as given.
Well, I just want to point
question.
out, that is straight out of Urban Legend universe. This whole, you guys have heard the whole one, the boyfriend's death, the boyfriend goes for a walk to get gasoline, the girl falls asleep, she wakes up, the cops are outside, and he says, come out of the car and walk towards me and don't look back. That kind of recitation is a key part of urban folklore, of how these stories work. So we've got one of those here. The cops say, don't look back. But here's what's funny, is he's such an idiot that when she goes, what? That sounds ridiculous, then he just yells, and he goes,
she goes, I'm going to go upstairs and find my friends and tell them to come out too.
And so he goes, the call's coming from the house. Because he can't even keep, I don't know, this guy has zero dignity, none. He's Enos from the Dukes of Hazzard. He has literally no common sense whatsoever. I'm not talking about Enos from the short-lived spinoff where he was suddenly a lot smarter. I'm talking about the actual Dukes of Hazzard. Okay, I don't know where that came from. Okay, so basically Olivia Hussey goes upstairs to check out, what's going on up there. Yes, everybody's dead. Now she's really worried. Oh, and of course the killer is hanging, hiding, and so now she has to run from him. She had her opportunity to get away, and now she's missed it. And where does she wind up running to? Can anybody tell me? Does she run out the front door?
No, of course not. She goes upstairs. She tries to go out the front door, but he grabs her.
She runs into the basement.
Yeah, she grabs. Oh, yeah.
She grabs the poker from
but he does grab. He grabs
fireplace.
her hair.
Yes. Yeah, she's trying to go out the front door. He grabs her hair, and so that prevents her from going out the front door, and so she turns around and runs into the basement, locks the basement door. Now he's real mad. He's banging.
But she has yet to see the guy somehow. I don't understand how she's never seen him, even though they grabbed her hair and everything. Like, she never sees him. So she goes into the basement, and she sees someone, like, kind of tapping at the window or, like, trying to see through the window.
Yeah, the basement windows, just like we have,
Mm-hmm.
And it's her boyfriend, Peter, and he busts in, and she's afraid of him. And by the way, Peter may very well intend to do her violence. It's possible. It's totally,
Because she's broken up with him at this point. He's really happy.
Yes, and because she's been like, look, you're crazy, and I want to go to college, and all that. And so next thing we see, the cops show up. They head down into the basement. She has killed Peter, and they presume, okay, we've got the bad guy. And for a while, we think that Olivia Hussey may be dead, because she's just laying there still, but then she's awake and she's in shock. Now, Drew or Tony, can you explain? Do you want to play out the rest of this movie for me? Because it's very short. It's really just sort of all one scene with her upstairs, but it's very strange. With
her in the basement, you mean?
Well, no. I mean, after they find her, the cops show up.
Oh, yeah.
They, or I can do it. They
give him a chance.
Well, they're all. She's in shock, and they put her to bed, and then so there's cops all over the house.
Yeah.
And then the dad passes out. So for some reason,
and they
all
still
of
haven't
the
found Claire, by the way. I mean, because they've got 3 bodies in the house. The dad is upset. Still haven't found Claire. Go ahead.
Well, they never go. Like, near as we can tell, they've never gone up into the attic, because we later on find out that the bodies are still up there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, and this is the ending. This little sequence here is the one thing, and it that really irks me, because I there is the one incompetent cop, but up to this point, and Tony, feel free to disagree with me, but the cops aren't portrayed as super incompetent, certainly not by horror movie standards, but they all just kind of file out, except for leaving one man out in front of the house. And I don't believe anybody would leave a girl that.
No, it makes no sense.
None of that makes sense. They don't have a CSI group, team checking for fingerprints. Nobody, like you said, nobody went up into the attic. What the hell?
Bodies up there that they haven't.
Yeah, it's like they've not. There's nobody collecting evidence. There's nobody watching this girl. There's nothing going on.
I think you would at least leave a nurse or a female cop in this girl's bedroom to watch her sleep. Oh, but they don't have any
so that when
female
she wakes up, maybe somebody will be there to tell her not to freak out.
Right. Because
apparently the person that's going to be there to tell her not to freak out is Billy.
Yes, right, exactly. Because Beanie is actually hiding in the attic and just waiting for all the cops to leave and go do whatever it is that these dumbass Toronto cops do.
Yeah.
If you are a Toronto cop listening to this show, I'm not talking about your case. I'm talking about these 1974 guys. But presumably they're all headed for the Dunkin' Donuts or whatever the hell, and it's just a big house and this girl and one cop out on the front porch, and Beanie, the killer, is in the attic and he's going to come down. And so I can only presume that a couple things could happen. Billy's going to come down and he's going to instantly kill Olivia Hussey, and so that'll be the end of that. Or he'll come down and kill her and try to kill her, and she'll get away, and it'll be like Halloween 2 somehow. Or maybe he'll literally blow it off, and and not get around to kill it. We don't know. But you know what's most frustrating about all this? I don't know what the hell Billy's up to. I don't know why nobody ever got around to telling us.
Yeah, and that really annoyed me, because I'm one of these people who, I'm a sucker for the Hollywood ending where everything gets all tied up neatly, and even if the bad guy doesn't get caught or it gets away, like with Silence of the Lambs or something, I need there to be some kind of explanation of what happened.
Yeah. What's
going on, and I just
sometimes I like the Hollywood ending, but that I have zero problems with.
Right.
I don't mind that we never really explain why this guy is doing what he's doing. I'm willing to accept that he's just batshit insane.
But in Men, Women, and Chainsaws, she talks about how in the formula, Antonio recognized this from every movie we've watched like this. In the formula, there's always a point where they go down under the bottom of the house, or they go up into somewhere in the attic, or they find an old shed in the woods, and they find some old books, and they find some old dolls, and somebody goes, oh my God, I just figured out that he was this, and he did this, and the family was that, and there was voodoo or whatever, and now we know, now's the story, and you've got it, and then you go to the Rock'em Sock'em ending. And this movie is missing that. That's the one thing this movie is missing, I think, to make it a real slasher in the typical formula, is that there is no big reveal scene where you figure out what is up with this killer.
Well, you also don't. The killer is the opposite in many ways of what a killer in a slasher movie is. Because first of all, from Halloween on, there's that element of being larger than life, of being supernatural, and certainly, the Friday the 13th films and the Nightmare on Elm Street movies took that extremely literally. But Billy is not iconic because he's just a voice.
Yeah.
You don't even see what he looks like.
Yeah.
Whereas,
except for the one eye, which is kind of iconic, because at one point
when you think about, we just did Texas Chainsaw Massacre several weeks back. The opposite of that, when you think about Leatherface, who is so visually alarming and almost to the point of being hard to look at. And then you have Michael Myers, which comes after this, who's extremely stark and is going to just stay in your brain.
Myers is very cool to look at. His
And maybe that's the reason why we don't have 15 Black Christmas movies, is they didn't have an extremely well-designed center figure that could be turned into action figures and dolls and, model kits and all these other things.
Second movie. We didn't really have an exciting Jason in the first two Friday the 13th movies either.
That's true. But you did have all the talk of curses and things like that. So there was stuff there. This doesn't have that.
Yeah. You're going to Camp Blood, ain't you? Yeah.
Yeah. And in some ways I kind of like that about this, but it does kind of put it in a weird place as far as horror movie history goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to ask, because we talk about cops so much, and I hate to backtrack, but I really want to know what Tony thought about the cops in this movie.
Well, when they're really doing their job, they're doing a good job. Saxon's trying to get stuff done, but you've got the whole thing we were talking about, with the cops okay, that's done. And then you've got other cops who are really legitimately trying to help find the little girl. And then you've got the other cop who goes at the beginning, who goes from ineffectual and whatever to okay, I'll begrudgingly deal with this. And that's when Margot Kidder acts like a jerk. Yeah. So I don't know. It's kind of all over the place. But again, it's kind of real. That's kind of what makes it more realistic is you'll have some cops who are legitimately hey, I'm trying to get this done. And you'll have other cops who are I've been here a while, I'm kind of jaded. And then other cops who just really like, I'm put in my hours, I am going home. Suck it,
There's
world.
no way that they would be so incompetent with the crime scene like they are at the end. That's the part where I'm just like, what?
I refuse to believe that nobody would have searched the attic.
Exactly. That's why I always, Jason and I love to quote, is it Manos the Hands of Fate? Yeah, Manos the Hands of Fate, the MST version, but it's the MST version. And so at one point, he's looking for his kid, and he just kind of opens the door and then, like, closes it again, and the MST guys go, after a thorough search of the first room, and we always quote that when stuff like this, so it's like, after a thorough search of the house, they've like not managed to get to the attic.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. Somehow I kept getting, because this is a small town and they're all wearing these like cold weather coats and stuff. They remind me of the Simpsons cops. You know? I mean, a lot. You know, and you have. I think Tony's right. You have that same sort of level of variety, shall we say, in attention to quality and so forth. So yes, we should definitely come around to our final thoughts and then do our endorsements on Black Christmas. Our Christmas episode. And we haven't yet nailed down the date that we're coming back. I know it will probably be the last week in January, but in the meantime, we'll be posting episodes that you guys should definitely check out. So, all right, let's do final thoughts. Black Christmas. Julia, what did you think?
Well, I don't think we really did talk that much about the 70s, actually. So I did want to say a little bit more just about that, about how the fact that we talked about it some in the context of like what the sorority house or whatever it was like and everything, but just everything about, to me, how they dress and how they look and how they act feels like it doesn't feel like Canada, a foreign country. It feels like foreign country, I mean, so that was just a really an interesting thing. And then the mood of the film in some of the other ways that they managed to achieve that, like the music, the score is really unusual. Like apparently they achieved a lot of that with some really strange. I'm trying to find what it was that he put like. He put like utensils in the piano to get this really weird effect. I just think there's a lot of neat mood type of things that they do in this movie that's very unusual. Let's see what else he said. Distort this. So Zitterer also said he would distort the sound further by recording audio tape while putting pressure on the reels of the machine to make it turn slower. So just stuff like that. That's why I think it was really an interesting movie. If it weren't for the end being just so bizarre. But I liked a lot of pieces of it, and I would just rewrite the ending a little bit, and that would make me happy.
Very cool, very cool. Drew, final thoughts. Black Christmas.
Like I said, I really like this movie. I'd actually say it's my third favorite Christmas-themed horror film. Not that that's a long list by any stretch of the imagination, but I mean, it puts it in the running with Gremlins and Rare Exports. Both are really great films. I think it's not without its flaws, but I like the fact that it is so chaotic and it does. Anybody who's ever lived through real life tragedy, and I mean it doesn't have to be murder or anything like that, but just if you've lived through something bad happen to you, like the randomness of this movie just really strikes me as very true and I appreciate that.
That's really interesting. I think that's a very unusual perspective on that. Tony, final thoughts. Black Christmas.
Yeah, I guess, like I said before, I wish I kind of liked it more, but it doesn't really resonate with me at all. I don't know. I just, like I said, maybe timing, maybe just, I'm not sure what, but I definitely don't see myself just revisiting this very often, if at all.
Yeah.
It just, it's got some okay moments. I think that the stuff with the 70s, I mean, again, with the 70s, if you want to see kind of alien stuff, go back. I don't know if Netflix still has them. Watch early SNL episodes where the comedic timing on SNL is totally different. The news is presented in a really different way than what we're used to. That kind of stuff, I think, will really also, you're like, wow, I don't remember it being so strange, because there's lots of 70s movies and 70s comedy and TV shows that I still like. But it is alien, and it can be very alien depending on what media, what movie you're seeing, and what, how it all plays out. So, I don't know. I'm kind of sad that this is our last movie before the break, because it wasn't one that I enjoyed as much as some others. But, I guess that's what makes interesting discussion.
It absolutely does.
I didn't really resonate with me much at all. And other than a few of the things that it launches into future slasher films and the like, and it is an important touchstone. I don't think it's without merit by any means, but as far as a movie that resonates with me, it didn't really do it. So
very, very cool. I guess that leaves me. I've pretty much given most of my thoughts. I agree. This movie gives you a sometimes disturbing look at what a weird world the 70s was. That maybe that's what Joy and I just kept coming back to mostly. I mean, the way that we were both thinking of it is, when you think about it, the 40s looks like a dressed-up version of our own reality. The 40s is all people behaving in a certain. When you think about 40s horror movies, people are generally behaving in a certain acceptable way. When you look at films from the 70s, especially more independent films, there's a feeling of grunginess, like all the rules have just sort of been thrown out, and nothing has quite taken its place. So it's not really clear exactly how everybody's supposed to be dressing, and everything's sort of slovenly. And even your best suits and tuxedos and what have you have a certain sloppiness to them. Your big bell-bottoms are swishing around, and ties are giant and floppy, and there's just sort of generally this feeling of heavy, lush floppiness to the 70s that I find fascinating to watch, but troubling at the same time. So, good stuff. I too am sad that this is our last one before the break, but I'm really glad that it's one that we had a chance to talk about. And Tony, just for you, whatever we do when we come back will be one. I will let you choose one that you love, just to get the taste out of your mouth.
That's okay.
Let's do our endorsements. So, Julia, do you have anything for us this week?
Gosh, I wish I could think of something. I guess just I endorse that everybody watch all of our wonderful traditional holiday cartoons,
yes.
Like the, even this is the fun thing. I endorse watching Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, but thinking of it with current, like PC standards or whatever. Like, I don't know if I'm saying it the right way, but just with our current mores, because it's really weird to watch it that way. Like, you kind of, if you watch it as your own kid self, then it's it's magical and sweet. But if you watch it with our current ideas about feminism and what and prejudice and everything, you realize that it's really a kind of a dark show. So anyway, that's what I endorse.
Yeah,
yeah, it is.
Yeah, and it's hard to defend, the way that some of the reindeer, especially Santa Claus, behave. Unless
Santa's not a reindeer, but yeah.
Well, no, but I mean the people of the North Pole.
Right,
the reindeer behave very poorly, and Santa Claus behaves abominably. But they all learn their lesson in the end.
Well, the snowman behaves abominably.
Fumble.
That's right.
Sorry.
So,
put yourself up for that one.
All right. So, Drew, do you have anything to endorse for us?
I hate to sound like a broken record and for the third week in a row endorse my own stuff, but
crazy.
While on break, you all, everybody, all our listeners, your homework is to go on Comixology and read Halloween Man, and then go onto Facebook or email me or something and let me know what you think, because we're working very hard on this comic to bring it to all of y'all. And I would like to know more. Feedback's very essential to that. So please bone up on Halloween Man. It's on the Monsterverse section of Comixology. We just have a new story arc starting. It's about vampires. We all know, everybody who listens to the show, a lot of you like vampires. So, hey, do it to it.
Excellent. Tony, do you have anything to endorse?
Yeah, I just went this weekend to Button-Umathon, the annual 24-hour movie marathon hosted by Harry Knowles for his birthday / Geek Christmas, as it's become to be known. And I really enjoyed Matthew Vaughn's Kingsman, The Secret Service. I think that movie was really fun. We got to see Inherent Vice, which I think is really cool. The interview with Seth Rogen, which is sure to piss off North Korea in a major way that it's already pissed off. Like, that was really kind of fun and really funny. It was a really good, plus we saw a lot of vintage films too. It was really good. I got to meet, I think I talked to him before, meet up again with the director of a horror movie called Mary Ann, and I will be posting that. I think people should check it out. It's a cool indie horror movie that unfortunately hit home with some stuff we've talked about before, where piracy really hit the director really hard, and it was kind of a cautionary tale as far as, putting all your dreams in it and being hit by actual how piracy can affect an indie film. But we'll post links for Mary Ann, which I think you should check out. Also, I saw a movie that's not out till next Christmas called A Christmas Horror Story, which is an anthology story that has a framing device with William Shatner as it plays part of the framing device. Some of the stories in the anthology I thought were more successful than others, but it was kind of cool to see a horror movie, for around Christmas that we could talk about. And so next year, I'm guessing we'll probably be talking about it, and as stuff comes about. It's fun. Maybe not my favorite anthology, but it was cool. Like, again, to see a horror movie anthology, which there aren't a lot of, and one set around Christmas. So,
awesome.
A Christmas Horror Story is what the title was. Now, if it changes between now and the year, we saw it with temp effects in certain spots and stuff like that. So we'll see how a year takes it.
Yeah.
It's not out till next December, and it's kind of they tried to get it out, but when you're doing an indie film, you do what you can do to get it out there. So, but that's my endorsements are those movies, and Mary Ann. I'll post the links where you can see Mary Ann, especially up in the endorsement section as usual.
Please, I'm looking forward to that. What kind of vintage movies did you watch? This is a 24-hour thing.
We saw
noon on Saturday and come out at noon on Sunday, if I recall.
Great. The vintage movies were Hooper with Burt Reynolds, which was the movie within a movie awesomeness about him being a stuntman, which is great. Yeah. A really awesome movie called The King and the Mockingbird. There was an animated film that took close to 40 years to get out. So it started in 48 and wasn't finished until like 78. Cool stuff, like really great kind of satire, really beautiful animation. It was kind of interesting to see how animation can kind of try to retain the same feel but morph over that number of years. We saw Captain Courageous, which is really great black and white film, awesome. $1 Million Mermaid, which was Technicolor about Annette Kellerman. And the Technicolor print was just beautiful. Son of Kong, we saw, which is, a follow-up to King Kong, done slightly more Kong the Kong in this film, the Son of Kong, has slightly more comedic stuff that happens, and they did that on purpose because they knew they wanted a Kong film. They wanted to rush one out. They knew they couldn't make it as epic, so they decided to make it slightly funnier, I guess, is what we're told. Samuel L. Jackson showed up, and that was interesting. He's a really cool cat. I really want, if I had my choice of people I could hang out with, I think I want to watch some kung fu movies with Samuel L. Jackson. That's on my, if I could hang out with a celebrity and watch the movies, that's what I would want to do after his, and he's great in Kingsman. I think his character, his supervillain character is pretty fun in that movie. And Seth Rogen showed up for the interview, and that was pretty funny too. Hopefully, they won't be targeted by North Korea after this film comes out, because it's pretty, I don't know. I guess I don't know if brave's the right word, but certainly, you hope that you have to see it, I guess, to really get why it could be a dangerous thing if it makes North Korea mad.
Yes. I'll be fine if the worst they do is take out their frustration on Sony films.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that is a weird situation. All along with that, they touched on that. Somebody asked a question about it. They're like, "Well, what we can do." It's like, it's kind of bad. I don't think it was because of us, but hey, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. No, it's true. There's no way of knowing. I mean, I'm not even being sarcastic. It sure seems likely.
Right.
All right. Well, wow. Well, thank you very much. Please post links to everything that you mentioned.
Sure.
Including some of the. It'd be cool to see some of the trailers for some of the Lost stuff that you saw, like Son of Kong and what have you. So.
Yeah. Definitely. I'll scrape the Phenomenon page, the Wikipedia page, and post that part up, and then some trailers and stuff along with the other stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so my endorsement is, Bob Clark made this film, Black Christmas. He also made one of my favorite Sherlock Holmes movies, which I mentioned earlier, which is called Murder by Decree, which I really admire. It's a Sherlock Holmes film. One of the ones where Sherlock Holmes chases Jack the Ripper. That's made a lot of novels. I don't know if it's made a lot of movies, but pretend you haven't seen any others. This one stars Christopher Plummer as Sherlock Holmes and James Mason as Watson. So it is a classic, very sort of modern but very BBC feeling. It has the elegance of the BBC, but the sweep of a Hollywood picture. It's made by Bob Clark, and it's really good. And it gives a very compelling theory as to the identity of Jack the Ripper. Very good Sherlock Holmes. I absolutely love it. And I always feel like, someday when Christopher Plummer is no longer with us, I think that his performance in Murder by Decree will be remembered as one of the defining performances of his career. So if you're just accustomed to seeing him in Sound of Music, you should check him out as Sherlock Holmes. So that'll do it for me. I really appreciate everybody being with us this fall and heading into winter, and we will be back probably, I think, the last week of January. We haven't yet announced what those movies are going to be, but in the meantime, we're going to be putting up some movies that we recommend to keep you company through the weeks to come. So thank you all very much. Have a Merry, Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays and everything in between.
Happy New Year.
Yes. And look out for Beatty in the attic, and we will talk to you soon.
Just stay out of the attic.
One last thing I got to say. Come to the Facebook page. Let us know what you think. Argue with us. Leave us reviews on iTunes, all of that stuff. And if we would ask one Christmas present, it is bring one more person. Bring one more person to the podcast, because we always want more. All right. We'll see you soon. Bye, guys.
Happy holidays.
Night.
Bye.